Okay, so we can start.
Okay, so let's talk about some feedback for Bowers Part 2. As you may know, the speaking criteria, how it's graded, there's 4 areas: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, which means vocabulary, grammar, range, and accuracy, and pronunciation as well. So we'll talk about each 4 of those and some of the positives and negatives from what he said in his Part 2. So first of all, fluency and coherence. Okay, what were the good things about that? Well, he was able to keep going and finish the Part 2 card without stopping and having long pauses. And he also didn't rely on hesitation or repetition in order to keep talking. Yeah, it wasn't necessary. So well done, he did well with that. Maybe some things to improve. There was a little bit of repetition and hesitation there. For example, he said, I was so captured by, and also, sorry, he said, let me do that bit again, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of repetition and hesitation there. He said, I was so captured by, about beautiful Vietnam. So obviously you want to try and avoid that when you're doing speaking. And coherence, fluency, it's not just fluency, it's fluency and coherence. And it was a little bit unclear there when he was going through the parts of the topic card. On a topic card you have the topic and then you have 4 subtopics, and it's a little bit unclear when he was moving from subtopic to subtopic. So perhaps he could have used some kind of linking phrase there to introduce each subtopic, just to make it clearer for the listener, and coherence. In addition to that, actually, beginning the talk, maybe he could have used an introductory phrase as well. So let's move on to lexical resource or vocabulary. Actually, probably his strongest feature there, I would say. There was a few less common items. In particular, he said, such an antique look, each page of history will be uncovered and revealed, artifacts and immersed, so quite good with that. And there weren't that many errors either, just a few. One example there, he said grade 7th, yeah, but overall vocabulary was quite good. Let's move on to grammar. And remember, grammar is not just range, it's also accuracy, so you have to try and avoid mistakes. So first of all, positives. He did quite well there, tried to reduce errors by adding the S to the countable nouns, right, which is a common problem actually for Vietnamese learners. For example, he said historical buildings with the S on, sculptures, paintings. So good work with that. And try and remember as well, you might think it's not very important to put it on, but each time you miss an S off, that's a mistake, yeah, and that will count against you with your grammar score. Range, use some passive effectively. For example, he said each phase of history was depicted in each room. And another important thing with accuracy as well, actually, he used past tense well and changed the verb. For example, our school prepared the trip for us. I was really immersed in history. Also important that you change the tense. A few errors, but not too many. It's quite accurate, but there were a couple. One of the museum, should be museums, and a lot of Vietnamese wars artifacts. Wars, when you're using a noun to replace an adjective, you need to take the S off that if it's countable. But overall, grammar not too bad. Pronunciation, positives there, could be understood throughout. Yeah, without much effort there. Also some good chunking, generally okay. He said, for example, you know, it was such an interesting trip. So you want to try and create those chunks of language without much hesitation and pausing in between. What could be improved there? Maybe sentence stress wasn't always correct. But to go to a museum, try and think about with sentence stress which words should be stressed within the sentence and which words shouldn't. For example, usually in English we stress nouns, verbs, adjectives. Words like but and to, we don't want to add stress to them. Okay? All right, so moving on, specifically advice, what could we do there? A couple of things. Fluency there, maybe we could try and improve that. How can we improve fluency? Basically, it's practice. You need to be speaking English as much as possible. So practice more, specifically for Bao here, practice more to reduce hesitation when thinking of a language, and use some linking phrases as well, like I mentioned before, to introduce and break up the subtopics on the task card. And as I mentioned, an introduction phrase. So you need these linking phrases because it's not just fluency, it's coherence, which means understanding and organisation of your answers. Yeah. Grammar specifically here, basic grammar. Like I said already, putting the S's on things in past tense was quite good. So what could he do? He could try to use more complex sentences there. There were quite a lot of simple sentences. For example, conditionals, yeah, other complex sentences, relative clauses, adverbial clauses, things like that. Pronunciation could be understood throughout, so how can we improve that? What we need to do is create more rhythm and chunking and sentence stress. Now, in order to create more rhythm, it's linked with fluency. You need to have good fluency in order to be able to speak with rhythm. So again, that's linked to fluency, and also, like I mentioned before, focus on sentence stress, stressing the key words within sentences. So that's all for Bao.